Hello, everybody. I'm very grateful to you to wake up so early after the great party we had last night. And I think it's really about degrowth, because degrowth, and it's what I will present today, it's about to connect with each other. So I will make a presentation mostly in 4 points. I will give the 3 main definitions of degrowth, and the 4 points will be more about global thinking, about where we are and the connections with permaculture, because we are in a conference of permaculture. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. I would like to thank also the people who created this fantastic village here where we are to welcome us. And I think in particular the food was very delicious and the place is very wonderful. So let's go directly to the main point. So first, 3 definitions of degrowth. And you will see that degrowth is really mostly about opening questions. It's really about think out of the box and how we can reappropriate the meaningful question to get the right answer to the problems what we face. So the first definition of degrowth is a provocative slogan. It's a semantic tool inviting us to decolonize our imaginary. Degrowth started more than around 15 years ago in France. It's a word which was invented first by somebody coming from marketing job. He was a project manager in a big French corporation dealing with marketing. And it's very interesting because he quit his job because he was pissed off with the fact that he had to manipulate the brain of the people to make us desire more and more and more things what we don't really need. But he had also this brilliant idea using his knowledge to have this word, which is degrowth. And since then, I don't know either in English. So this is degrowth. Oh, it's ash. So you asked me to do something very difficult, but in France it's even more difficult because it's décroissance. So that's something which is not natural for us because we grew up in a model of society which is always dominated by always more. We were taught, we are every day taught by politicians, by economists, by intellectuals, by TVs that we always need to grow. We always need to be stronger, to go further, to always more, with always more culture. And degrowth is a provocative slogan which invites us to reconsider that, to question, on one hand, the physical limits to growth, and I would say, what is even more important, the cultural limits to growth, because nowadays it's more than obvious, and it's very, very frightening when I read more and more and more things about that. We are already facing the physical limits to growth, but we are also facing the cultural limits to growth, that we are not happy. We live in a model of society where we are consuming 3-4 planets if you consider your environmental footprint, but we are not 4 times happier than we were in the time when we had more sustainable way of life. And degrowth is this type of word who invites us to provocate. And what is very interesting with degrowth, and since I am involved in the degrowth movement, I can see it everywhere, that it's something which is first, when you hear about it, shocking. And sometimes degrowth, or not sometimes, everywhere, every time, degrowth is criticized because it's not a good slogan to federate a large movement. And I would say it's very good, which could sound quite interesting, because the main goal is not to have a large movement. The main goal is to have a qualitative movement, to make more and more and more people focus on the right idea. And it's what I can really observe in France, where the movement started first 15 years ago, that the movement didn't grow, but the movement helped to make the discussion go somewhere else, to push the debates to go to the right questions. And the second point why I like degrowth, even if it's not a federative slogan, is that it's not reappropriatable by the mainstream system. 15 years ago, and it was one of the reasons why people started to use this provocative slogan, degrowth, we started to speak about sustainable development. And we could see now that in the name of sustainability, in the name of greed, in the name of sustainable development, you can buy everything. You can buy an air ticket to go to spend a weekend in Tunisia in an air-conditioned hotel, and it's green because the people say that they will plant 2 trees next to the hotel or this type of things. You can buy a green car. You can buy a green whatsoever. And I really believe that degrowth, it will take more time for the people coming from marketing to reappropriate or to empty this word from its content. We live in a society dominated by communication. I started with advertisement. We live in a society dominated by the fact that we always empty the word from their content. And I really believe that degrowth, it will be more difficult or longer. When we manage to empty this word from its content, it means that somehow our brain has been colonized. And the last point, what I like with degrowth, which is connected to the former one, that degrowth is inviting the people for individual, collective, political, or society journey, that it takes time to think out of the box, to get rid of what was put in our brain since we were children. And degrowth is connected to what we call decolonization of our imaginary. So decolonization doesn't really make sense in Central Europe. It makes much more sense in France, because France has a long tradition for colonizing country and this type of things, and also culturally colonizing other society. So decolonization, it means that we reappropriate a mindset which is meaningful. And imaginary, it's something we grew up. We create a type of mindset, a type of beliefs, a type of values, and it's very often very difficult to question them. Like if you think in our society, we use cars. And in fact, if you were coming from another society, and you will see that 50% of the public space in big cities are occupied by pieces of metals, we will find it totally absurd. But we grew up culturally in a society where to use a car and to park your car, it's something normal. And to decolonize our imagination means how we can implement discussions, dialogue, to start to look at the world with other type of glasses, to make a step aside and to look at the world differently and everything. And degrowth is inviting us for that. So it was the first definition of degrowth, a provocative slogan, reminding us that there are physical limits to growth and cultural limits to growth, and whose main goal is really to push, to have discussion, to think out of the box. The second definition of degrowth, and I think it's also very important, it's a multidimensional thinking. And I think it's very fundamental that we connect the dots. And I already said it, and I will insist on it. We are not only facing the physical limits to growth, but we are facing a lot of limits to growth. And me, I am an engineer. I started to deal with degrowth in studying the physical limits to growth. So mostly I was studying a lot the energy issues. I spent a lot of time analyzing the how much oil do we use every year, how much oil reserve do we have, and how we are running to the limits of oil production. It's what we call the peak of production of oil, peak oil. And after I started to study the peak of everything, peak of all the fossil energy, peak of metals and everything. And what is quite interesting is that it made me quite depressed. I became what we call a catastrophist. And when I was talking with my family, my friends, my colleagues and everything, nobody wanted to hear. Nobody want to hear about catastrophes and everything, which doesn't mean that we shouldn't study it and we shouldn't be aware of that. But we should balance these physical limits to growth analysis to another type of limits what we face. And that's how I discovered the degrowth movement in France, that we are consuming more and more and more and more and more, and we are not happy. And I started to realize that I can find other points or doors to invite people to question themselves about the limits to growth, the absurdity where we are living here in this world and so on. And the second point is really about the fact that we are living in a world where we keep working more. We keep having more stress. We keep consuming more. We keep having more and more and more social pressure to do more. We don't know what. And we are not happy. And for example, I will give you just a few, maybe 2 or 3 examples. First, the work. I'm coming from a country which is called France, and there are more and more surveys and studies and polls showing that people are sick with their work. For example, people with high position in companies in France declare that 50% of them declare that every day they have to take decisions or to do things which go against their ethic. And do we call it a modern society or developed society and everything? Half of the people in France declare that if they have an opportunity to quit their job and to do something else in their life, they will do it right now. Another survey coming from UK, because France, it's another country, it's not so much rational. UK is really an Anglo-Saxon approach and so on. So 1/3 of the people in UK are saying that when they wake up in the morning, they go to work and they don't know what they do. They think that they do something which is totally useless. And the degrowth is inviting us to connect with people, to implement dialogues that we have a lot. I spoke about energy first. We have a lot of wonderful energy, know-hows, knowledge and everything, to bring the people to make a step aside and to be the actors of the transformation of the society. So it's one of the pillars of degrowth to question work. That we live in society, when you meet somebody, first question you ask is not who are you? It's what are you doing? And we should change that. We should change that, this logic and everything, that the main point is not what are you doing, in particular when you do bullshit, to use the word of David Graeber, an American anthropologist, a bullshit job. When you do bullshit in your everyday life to produce things which are not very useful or to manipulate the brain of the people, like when you work in marketing and everything. So we have to invite the people to change their mind and not to ask what are you doing, but who are you? Another pillar of degrowth is the logic of counterproductivity of development. And now I will quote Ivan Illich. In the 1970s, this sociologist coming from not so far from here, he was born in Croatia and made his life in Germany, France, United States and Mexico in the last century. In the 1970s, he made a very interesting study to calculate what the average speed of a car, if you include in your calculation, how many hours do you have to work to finance your car? And he made it so in the United States in the 1970s, and he found that average car in that time in the United States is 5 kilometers per hour, which doesn't mean that the car is something we have to necessarily burn, but it means that the car society is a totally counterproductive, totally useless model of society. And so you have your car, and you need a car to go to work, and you need a job to pay your car. That's the type of model of society what we invented. And the question what we put in degrowth is how to get rid of that and how to reappropriate the technologies, the technique, the tools, what we use in our everyday life. A third point, what I like in degrowth, and I could develop a lot of points, because now I am in Hungary, so I will speak about that one. It's how economy is totally perverting our perception. So I will go to Karl Polanyi, or Polanyi Károly, to use his Hungarian name, is, I think, a very interesting historian of economy. And he wrote several books, in particular, The Great Transformation, where he shows that what we consider as normal, to have our brain or imaginary totally focusing on how much it is, about money, about markets, it's something which is a social construction. Historically, in a lot of civilization, it was not the case. And there were always markets, but markets were balanced by a lot of other values, by political values, cultural values, traditions, spiritual values, and everything. And so while reading Polanyi, we can question the craziness of our world, like, for example, in a country like Greece, in the name of economy, in the name of public debt, we destroy education, we destroy solidarity, we destroy health, where economy, money creation, figures in the debt and everything are abstract construction, but education or environment or culture, it's not abstract. That's the reality what we live. And Degrowth is inviting us to re-embed economy, to put back economy in its right place, where economy shouldn't be a tool which is driving us, which is driving our policies, which is driving our imaginaries, but on the contrary, economy should be a tool out of a lot of other tools to reappropriate democracy and meaningful life. So what I like in degrowth, that we start from the physical limits to growth, we realize that it's not enough, and we connect it to the cultural limits to growth. And it's really about to connect the dots, to have a radical thinking, taking the problem from the roots, and understanding what are the problem, and step by step implement democratic, serene, non-violent transitions toward new models of society. And I really put it in plural because I love diversity. New models of society which will be sustainable, desirable, and of course convivial and autonomous, and I can add a lot of other type of adjective behind. I arrive to the third part of my presentation, the third definition of degrowth, as a citizen movement. Degrowth started 15 years ago, and it's very difficult to define with degrowth, with not degrowth, within the movement and everything. And I think it's something very fundamental. It's more like an open network, trying to connect a lot of different type of people. The main goal is not to grow, but the main goal is to improve the quality of the discussion and the connections with a lot of people all around the world. We speak about the 4 political levels or citizen levels of degrowth. The first one is about voluntary simplicity. It's an individual level. So how individually I can make a step to decrease my footprint, but mostly to improve my freedom, to reappropriate my freedom, my choices. The individual level is about working less to have a better life, is about using a bike instead of a car, reducing my consumption of meat, and to go to a CSA or local producer to, or even produce myself my food. It's about reappropriating time when it's possible, because we live in a model of society where it's not always possible to make this step aside and to work less or to reappropriate free time. When it's possible to reappropriate free time to do things which are meaningful for the society. Usually when you work and you make money, it's not so much meaningful. The second level, connected to the first one, is a collective level. And I am very lucky. I have the chance, and I also saw a lot of wonderful stories here in these 3 days. I travel all around Europe and everything, and there are really fantastic dynamics all around the world, all around Europe about it. The collective level is all these local initiatives where people, more or less outside of the dominant model, self-organize themselves to reappropriate and question their productions, their consumptions, their exchange, and also democracy. It's all the movement like community garden, like a CSA, like a local currency, like a transition network, like exchange system, and so on. There are a lot of examples. And what I really like, that there is no initiative which are similar to another one. There are a lot of creativity and a lot of diversity. It's really like to reappropriate what the nature is able to show us, the diversity. And the third level is about visibility. It's what I'm doing today. It's what I do quite a lot. It's to bring all these questions, all these debates in the society, to make an interview in the medias, to make a civil disobedience, non-violent civil disobedience action, to make a flash mob, to participate in a conference, also to participate in elections, because elections are providing us a space when we can bring some questions and debates and everything, but not to be elected, because if you want to change the world while taking the power, you will be taken by the power, which doesn't mean that we should let the power, but to create more and more debate, to occupy the space of debates and so on. And I think something which is very important in the philosophy of degrowth, it's on one hand, non-violence, because with violence, you never change anything. And on the other hand is that we have to be radical without being extremist. We have to be radical, taking the problem from the roots, without being extremists, not to be too much pushy and everything. You never convince anybody about anything else, but I think you can only invite the people to question things which are meaningful. And what we try to do with degrowth through these visibility things is not to convince the people, but to invite them for a journey, which is very difficult, which is very long. Moreover, it's a type of questions what we put on the table, which are really challenging, because it's questions everything what we believed, what we were pushed to believe in our life and everything. Type of questions we also challenge what our families, what we do in our everyday life and everything, and how step by step we can push the society for what we call a silent cultural transformation of the society, which could construct the pillars for transformation. The fourth political or citizen level of degrowth is a project. In degrowth, we are not only working for silent transformation of the society, but we are also working on the political level. We think that following the cultural transformation of the society, following the change in habits, in imaginary and everything, we need radical institutional changes. There we deal with a lot of different type of projects. Here I have to quote the logic of the limits, that we should implement type of laws where we limit our consumption in every society. We speak a lot about maximum income. And I think that maximum income is a very interesting proposal. It's not only important for environmental and social justice, but it's important to reappropriate culturally the sense of the limit. And very often when we speak about institutional transformation of the society, we realize that it's important to make this type of laws or this type of regulation technically, but it's even more important to do it culturally. That me, for example, I would be very happy with the maximum income. What you don't have to apply is that culturally people knows that to keep running after always more and more and more and more money, it's something which creates more problems that makes you happier. The same, we deal a lot with unconditional basic income, and one of my best friends in France was a degrowth guy and wrote the best book about unconditional basic income. He says that when the society will be ready for unconditional basic income, we won't need it anymore. And degrowth is really about that. We have to understand that the society is not directed by technique, but technique is following the culture. And which doesn't mean that the technique or unconditional basic income or maximum income are tools which are not useful, but you have to put them following trends of transformation. And I think that to open debates about all these type of tools is very often much more important than to implement it. Degrowth is a movement which started in France 15 years ago, and since at least 2008 has been internationalized, because we had the first international degrowth conference in Paris in 2008. Since then, there were 5 other conferences, and the last one took place in Budapest in last September. And what is very interesting, and it's really connected to what I said before, in the degrowth conference, that you don't only have people who are degrowth, and we don't want to have like a close community where everybody is the same, with the same flag, with the same slogan and everything. But it's a space where you implement dialogue with a large diversity of people. Just a few examples about that. When degrowth, which is coming from Latin countries, met with the Transition Network, which is an Anglo-Saxon movement, in the beginning it was very difficult, because in Latin countries, in particular in France, we like philosophy, we like talking, we like elaborating, always more sophisticated thinking and everything. And when we met with the Transition Network from UK, they said, okay, let's stop talking. We are facing peak oil and climate change. Let's implement pragmatic solution and everything. Let's implement a methodology where locally people can self-organize themselves and go to resilience. And we had some disagreement in the beginning, and it turned out that it was totally complementary. They brought us some pragmatism in France. So people who were only talking, started to put their hands in the soil and started to make a community garden, started to talk to their neighbor and to organize something. And on the other hand, the pragmatic approach of Transition Network, when they started to grow, very soon they faced the question of how to deal with the municipality, with the power, with the elections, with the economy, with capitalism and everything. And very soon they realized that we didn't think about that. And degrowth only thought about that, and they thought about that, and could help them to question this type of things. Another example, which is really interesting, when degrowth met with anti or post-development movement in India, and on the contrary to what we can believe, that there are a lot of fantastic movements all around the world, including in India or in China, in Africa, and so on, which are post-Gandhist movement. They taught to us about nonviolent strategy, where in degrowth, we were really, in the beginning, a type of activist French movement. We were always fighting, we were always attacking the people and everything. And the more we violently attack the people, the less we were able to open discussion. And why connecting or opening discussion and dialogue with Indian movement, we learned how important it is to first respect the person, to find a bridge on which you could initiate a dialogue and to invite the person to step by step, make their own steps and so on. The last example I will show about this internationalization of the dialogue and the movement, and I think it's something what we are experiencing also here in these days. It's when we met with South American post or anti-extractivist movement, where they taught to us that you shouldn't only think rationally, but you should also put into your movement a part of spirituality. It's what we call buen vivir, the good life, coming from South America, and how through other type of values and approaches, more spiritual or cultural approaches, you can really question our pulsion, what we have in Western societies, for domination, to dominate each other, and the domination of all on the nature, and how we can reconsider our interaction with each other, and we can reconsider our interaction to put back ourselves in the nature and everything. So that was the third definition of degrowth, citizen movement, which is trying to connect theory to the practice and everything. And now I arrived to the last point of my presentation about degrowth and permaculture. I think there are a lot of connection. I have a reading of permaculture, which is more like philosophical thinking. And it's really connected to what I've just spoke about with South American movements, that permaculture is inviting us to put ourselves as human beings into ecosystems. In Western societies and our rational spirit and everything, we were pushed to always dominate more and more nature, and to be so much arrogant that we wanted to believe that we can put ourselves outside of the nature. The result is quite violent. We can see it nowadays with, in particular, climate change, but not only climate change, a lot of disasters that we created. And I think permaculture is also driven, like degrowth, by this philosophy that we have to assume the fact that we belong and we are depending to what is around us by the nature. We are only depending from one energy, which is coming from the sun. We are depending from all these ecosystems, which are really complex, which are really diverse, which are not linear and everything. And from this perspective, I think there are very, very, very strong convergence between degrowth and permaculture. The second point, and it's what I could observe here in this discussion, that very often, also even if we understand this type of things and so on, and we have a strong philosophy, very often the human brain is made in a way that we stick in the technique. And in some discussion I could see here, and not only in permaculture, but in a lot of parallel or similar movements around, and also in degrowth, very often we start to do something and we get lost in the technique. And we focus much more in the technique, and we forget about the global picture. And what is degrowth is inviting us, and I think it's very complementary to permaculture and a lot of other movements. And I think that's why we need to have links with all these movements and everything. What degrowth is inviting us, it's always to question the things that when you start to do a project, it could be permaculture or something else, don't get lost in the technique, but always keep in mind the global picture. That the technique is connected to nature, it's connected to human interaction, it's connected to democracy, it's connected to culture, traditions, and this type of things. The last point I would like to underline, and after we will have time for a discussion. I think permaculture is one of the movements which is very important, because it's something which is constructed in reality that people can see. It's something what we call in degrowth concrete alternative. One of the dangers of this type of concrete alternatives that you make your great permaculture garden, you have a great community, you work a lot on that, and it's fantastic, it's working pretty well and everything. And after you forget that around you, there is a collapsing world. Around you, there are a lot of violence, barbarity happening, and so on. And what degrowth is doing connected to movements like permaculture and everything, it's also an alert that what you do is very important, and we need people who are focusing locally in implementing solutions and everything, but never forget that around you there is a world, and how to bring this, and it's also connected to a discussion we had, I think, 2 days ago, about seeds. I mean, you can implement a fantastic garden, be autonomous and everything, and if you don't care about the society, day after police will arrive and will tell you that you cannot use anymore this type of species because it's forbidden, because MPs or some politicians voted a law pushed by lobbies that we forbid you to do this type of things. And what is very important always to have people involved on different levels, because it's very difficult to do everything in the same time, but to create the links between different levels. From the political level, we need to have strong movement resisting. We need to have strong movement implementing critical mass of resistance against the movement, against the political and economic dominant system which is killing us. And we need also to have people who on different levels are implementing or constructing the pillars, experimenting also new ways of life. So these pillars on which we can construct the new world. And what I like in degrowth that we are inside the system, outside the system, and we try to push to have the links between the people who make a step aside, the people who are still inside the system. And also we try to construct this network. And I think I like the idea of a network because the society is really working based on network. I don't like a type of pyramidal or large movement and everything, but more network where we are improving the quality of the dialogue, of the discussion, of the cooperation between different type of people. And it's something which is sometimes a bit depressing because it's not so much visible. Our brain is seeing much more how many likes you have on Facebook than what the quality of discussion you implement in a society and so on. And I think permaculture, degrowth have a lot to do together from this perspective, because going together, it's totally complementary, and we can learn from each other, and we can also avoid to go to a wrong direction. So I arrived to the conclusion of my presentation. On one hand, when I go back to my engineer way of thinking, I am really pessimistic. I am really worried, or even a catastrophist about where we are nowadays in this world. I mean, there are every day more and more and more studies showing that we are really facing the limits of our model of society, and we are really facing the physical limits. I just read yesterday an article about biodiversity, that all the prediction about biodiversity loss, what we face, were more optimistic compared to what's really happening. So we have a lot of rational reasons to be sad, to be pessimistic. Also, when I look at the mainstream discussions, when I look at the mainstream political discussion, debates and everything from Trump to Macron, from Merkel to Orban and so on, I am quite pessimistic, because it's only about power game, it's only about communication, and we never put on the table the right question and the right challenges what we face nowadays. But if I get rid of my rational mind and I go back to more personal, emotional interaction with people, I am full of hope. Because in our society nowadays, which was not the case 10 years ago, I see a lot of potential for transformation. I see a lot of very interesting dynamics, which are not enough to really make a big change in our society, but which are enough to make me full of hope. 10 years ago, when I was speaking about degrowth, and I guess you experienced the same, people were mocking us. People didn't want to hear about the things. They didn't want to hear about climate change. They didn't want to hear about big oil. They didn't want to hear about biodiversity loss and this type of thing. Nowadays, we are in this stage where people know about it, but they don't know what to do. And our role is to show that solutions are already here, and to deal with that complexity that we are stuck in an imaginary, we are stuck in a system where the blockade is coming more from our brain than the fact we don't have solution. And when I see that, I am full of hopes, and I am very enthusiastic. Everywhere I travel, I meet people doing wonderful things. I meet people with who I can have wonderful discussion and so on. And based on these pillars, which are under construction for a new world, we can keep going. And I think that there are a lot of barbarities and violence going on in our society. For example, I'm coming from a country, France, where we faced a serial of terrorist attacks. And I don't say that to complain, but I think it was a very interesting alert, because the terrorist attack, what we faced, it was suddenly what we've been doing from Western societies all around the world came in our country. So we have a lot of barbarities that we need to always have a strong military industrial complex, to always make war to appropriate and control resources and so on. And degrowth is inviting us to understand that the choice is between barbarity and degrowth. Call it as you want, or barbarity and permaculture, barbarity and transition, barbarity and whatsoever. That we have to put the focus on the right question. If not, and it's what's happening in France with the terrorist attack, that we got terrorist attack and we never question why young people would rather, who are born and grew up in France, would rather bomb themselves than to be happy in the society. And we have to put the questions on the right points, always and everything, to minimize the violence and the barbarity what we have in our society. And the one which are upcoming, which if are unable to implement enough dialogue and questions and debates in the society, would be worse and worse and worse. And what I see in degrowth, that the history has never been linear, it's never been predictable. It's not like we are on a linear thing, but it's always like that. And I would say that with degrowth, our role with a lot of other movements in connection, in cooperation with a lot of other movements, to spread seeds for discussion, for dialogue, for connecting the people, for understanding what are the problems, and also seeds for implementing the construction of the new worlds, what we have to implement. So the challenges are very high, but the dynamics, I really believe, are very fantastic. So thank you very much for your attention, and I am very happy to have a dialogue with you. It's a very interesting comment, because I think the growth society was created in a way that we thought we unconsciously push ourselves to deny the fact that we get a birth and we die. And just 2 facts about that. First, we are nowadays all dying in a hospital. So we put death outside of the society. If you go to a hospital, you will see that it's very far away from what you can see here around in this village, from the beauty of life. For example, in a lot of older society, like hunter-gatherer society, death was not a taboo, was not something we denied. But when somebody in the community was injured, sick, or getting too old, and was slowing down the community, that was a person who culturally, and it was a cultural trends, who decided to say, I am
Okay.
No, psychologically speaking, it's called that we live in immortality hypnosis.
Yeah.
So that we all, every man and woman hypnosis himself or herself that he or she will never die, which is is about denial again. My question is, can you estimate somehow how many people percentage is willing or tending to slow life and degrowth at large, and what is the number which can change the way we're living? Total, unlimited growth, unlimited planet. So and aside of that, there is a problem for ecologists. You know what I want. There is a problem for ecologists and people like us, so to speak, that we are in an information bulb, because we tend to be among the people who are like us. So we see possibilities everywhere, and good life. But what is the majority in numbers? This is the question.
I don't really like quantitative questions, but I will try to answer. There was a survey which was very interesting, made in France, Italy, and Spain 1 year ago, asking a representative part of the people what they will decide and what kind of utopia or what kind of direction they want to go through. And the question was really well asked, because usually when you ask people about degrowth, you don't explain what is behind. And the first answer was degrowth. More than 50% of the people in these countries say that the right direction is degrowth. The second one was collaborative and social economy. And the third one, less than 20%, was about transhumanism. And I really believe, based on my experience, because I'm a professional degrowth person, going all around the society and giving talks and workshops and so on in different type of environment, that nowadays is very difficult when you have personal discussion to find people who will say that I am against degrowth, which was not the case 10 years ago. But the question is the complexity. I will give you an example. I was invited by a big bank in France to make a 4-hour-long workshop about degrowth with the 40 young leaders of this bank. And to be honest, I was terrorized before going there. I said, they will kill me. And I prepared a type of presentation where I mostly spoke about economic things, that to say that we shouldn't pay back the public debts. It's unfair, it's illegal, it's killing us, and we should erase the public debts and everything. So to say that to 40 young leaders of a big banks, it's quite something. And I thought they would kill me. And the discussion was not wrong, but the discussion was, yeah, you're right, but how to do it? How to do it democratically? How to do it without shock? Like when I said that we should erase public debt, they said that you cannot say it like that. Yes, we have to do it, but we have to do it democratically, serenely, and everything. And I think it makes a big difference compared to when I started to be involved in the degrowth movement 1 decade ago. If I arrived, first I wouldn't have been invited to give a talk in such an environment and everything. That 10 years ago, things were in another level. And now we enter into these complexities that we have a lot of addiction, technical and cultural addiction to growth, to these economic models and everything. And it's definitely. I will give you another example, and I think that's where we are facing big dilemmas and challenges. It's something we studied quite a lot with the degrowth movement in France at the city of Paris. 10 million people, as much as in Hungary. No food production, or very, very small food production. And a very, very, very sophisticated where every day you have boats, airplanes, trains, trucks arriving to the center of Paris in Rungis, bringing the food. And after, again, you have a lot of small trucks and everything, redistributing everything to shops, restaurants, people, and so on. How? And totally depending on oil, with food autonomy of 3 days or 4 days, which means that in France, if you don't have oil anymore, after 4 days, 10 million people are starving to death. And how to deal with such a complexity and how to implement transition? I mean, we can make some urban gardening and everything, but it takes time to implement it. It takes 4 days to stop the system to feed the people. And I really, far away from the political discussion what we have or what Macron and other people are doing, I really believe that the people are ready to think about this type of things and to implement the solution. We are like in a crossroad, but all the movement are not ready yet to really implement the right solution. So it's really about keep going in discussion, opening the mind of the people, implementing local solutions in small scale and everything to step by step construct the transformation. So I am, on one hand, quite pessimistic, but on the other hand, I think we are not facing type of linear transformation. And last point, and I don't want to be too long, we've just made, we work with researchers, and we made a macroeconomic perspective model where we studied 1 green growth scenario and 4 degrowth scenarios. And so the green growth scenarios, I don't go too much into the details. We destroy everything. Everything is, to speak politely, fucked up. I mean, we pass above all the limits of environmental limits and so on. But we made 4 degrowth scenarios. And one of the scenarios was the one that we developed in our book, which is more based on I would say slow transformation of the society. First, we start with the cultural transformation, and in this scenario, toward 2060, we start to implement radical things in the 2025. So during this time, what we are now, we keep going up in destroying everything, but you have something invisible in the society, which is going to another direction, debates, discussion, transformation of the society on low scale and everything, on which you can build after very radical transformation of the society. And
out really people like in Africa, which is demographic growing very speedy now, and they need refrigerator and conditioning and cars, like, you know, those people in the north. Why not us? You know, finally, after many years of exploitation and slavery and stuff, we can live on better level and longer, things like this. So there will be pressure to growth, actually. in those poor countries?
So it's a very fundamental question, and I will answer in maybe two or maybe a third point. So first, again, some storytelling. I gave a talk recently to a group of African students. In fact, they were teaching more than I was teaching. And their reaction, what I found very fantastic, was that, isn't it the new what Westerners people are inventing to forbid us to be ourselves and everything? But they totally understand the logic of degrowth, and they say that you don't have to speak about degrowth to African people because it's more in our culture, in our soul and everything. And I'm going to quote Animata Traoré from Mali, a philosopher, a woman, a wonderful philosopher from Mali. She said that with colonization, what we did is not only to steal their resources, because our Western model of society wouldn't find resources, but we also, and she uses, and I think it's wonderful, this word, le viol de l'imaginaire. So we raped their imaginary. We also put in their imaginary some beliefs or some culture, perverted their culture and everything. And in degrowth, it's the main pillar on which degrowth was constructed first. It was critics to development, colonization. And the second point, what I would like to underline, I think nowadays we have to reverse the logic. We speak about the debt of third world. In fact, we have a debt, environmental debt towards them. And also, I think they have much more to teach the country. Like, for example, it's invention, what we brought to Africa. In Africa, before colonization, there was no starvation. There were some problems, but there were a way of life which was adapted to the climate, to the environment, and this type of things. And we have to go back to this type of wisdom built on after post-development modern society and everything, to go above and to learn back what we destroy, using what we learned from this model of society and so on. And what is very, very fundamental, that there is no chance for these countries, for this region, to self-determine what they want to do if we don't degrow our footprint or thing. Because we can still live what we live, because we keep making wars in their countries, or we keep making political interference in their country to steal the resources. And we are living in this illusion of freedom of consumption and everything, because we are using all their resources. And the only chance for this country to reappropriate their self-determination is that we stop consuming as much as we do, and we stop being depending on their resources.
Thank you. We are talking about different type of growth. Okay, so economic growth, the growing population of the world, total energy, total primary material production, consumption, and so forth. Of course, they are existing in one regime. If you are looking to the very deep into this picture, you will find the macroeconomic model, the current macroeconomic model, as one of the cause, the root cause of the whole problem, because it is based on, the ongoingly growing consumption and production, so hand in hand. So this is how our current macroeconomic model works. So the question is here, what the degrowth movement offer what kind of macroeconomic model offered by your movement?
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, we have a model economic model and imaginary behind that. When I speak about growth, usually in writing it's easier. We use growth with a small g or a big G. When we speak about economic growth as an economic concept, it's a small g. And when we put a big G, it's like a paradigm. And both are interconnected. And our economic model is based on money as debt. So you make a loan, you have to pay back your loan with interest. So you always have to grow. It's grow or die. And it has a cultural impact and everything. It's also connected to the question about death. I mean, I go back and after answer your question that Freud analyzed capitalism from this perspective that it's about accumulating always more and more and more and more and more, and inconsciently hoping to buy immortality. Yeah. So we are totally in this trap culturally and economically. What degrowth is suggesting is, I would say, to put back economy in its right place. I mean, from this perspective, we are quite inspired by Polanyi to re-embed economy, so that economy should play not a central role, what we are facing in our economy, in our political system, but a small role based on a lot of things. And what we try to do, and I think it's very important in degrowth thinking that we don't have a clear solution, and we don't want to have clear solution to be adapted or to be implemented everywhere, but more questions. And through the question to let the people influence themselves. We had, and I think it was one of the main reasons when we organized the 5th International Degrowth Conference in Budapest in post-socialist context. It was to learn also from the mistakes and the disasters made under communism. That is very, I often say it's very easy to write a book about economy. I did it. But to start to implement it, it's another story. And it's how to step by step implement transformation of our imaginary and our thinking. So we have a lot of tools, a lot of proposals. I spoke about unconditional basic income. I spoke about local currency. In Budapest with our cooperative, we did a lot with reciprocity economy. Very often we say that as soon as we have money for a project, it creates much more problems than it solves problems. It's very interesting because money, it's based on figure, and it's totally perverting our perception of the things. And I would say there is no clear answer, and I think it can take a lot of different type of shape all around the world. It's how we can find a balance with the way economy is organized in our society and other type of economy. And also nowadays, that's where we speak about how to extend the spheres of free, I don't know what to say, free prices. If you think about what's the most important for well-being in our society nowadays, it's out of the logic of the market. It's what we did last night, dancing together with a musician and everything. It's about your relationship with your children, with your family. It's about friendship. That's what's providing the most important things for your well-being. It's about culture. And capitalism tries to push more and more to put a price, to put it inside this capitalistic system and everything. And we really believe that we have to make a pathway in the other direction, to put out of the market what's the most important. Like, for example, access to water, to food, to accommodation, energy, to reappropriate, not economically, but to reappropriate culturally the usage of the things. And we speak about free prices for a good usage of resources and to put in the market, because the market is very effective to manage that, to put in the market the right prices for misusage of the things. That if you use a pickup truck, you pay a lot. But if you use your bike, you shouldn't pay for that. It should be something you can do yourself and so on. So I think there is no one pathway, but a very large diversity of tools and proposals on which we can start to work, from basic income to local currency, from a different type of pricing for a different type of usage and everything. I don't know if I answer your question.
Me. Okay. You know, it's partly answer to you, because we have already a wonderful example of degrowth and limitation and resiliation, which is called Cuba. You know, Cuba is the best example how they degrowth really in the beginning of 90s, and how they realize a kind of sustainable economy with good healthcare and long life and so on. So it exists. And the other example, which was not so good, is Hugo Chavez and his economy in Venezuela, which collapsed actually. So how about study about Cuba? You know, how to implement this as a living example, which is functioning.
I think Cuba is a good example, because I often say that whether you like it or not, in 1 or 2 centuries, we will be in degrowth society. And now we have to work on the pathway. Cuba is a very interesting example. In fact, when you think about the fact that we don't have oil anymore, fossil energy anymore, we think that we will all die. But I really believe that it's exactly the contrary. You're liberated from this illusion to have suddenly such a huge access to a lot of energy. Yesterday we spoke about energy slaves. In Western societies, we are all depending on a lot of slaves from one society to another one. In Europe, I think it's around 50 to 200 slaves. That our way of life, what we do every day, we have like 50 or 200 people working energetically for us. So they are not existing because we are burning fossil energy, which is also order of magnitude, which are very, very interesting. That we, in a few generations of people, we are consuming what was accumulated on Earth during a million or tens or hundreds of millions of years of solar energy. So here we have type of order of magnitude which shows craziness and the illusion of freedom, or the illusion we are living in, and so on. Based on my experience, and I like to, again, it's very easy to write a book and to say that we will be happier without oil and this type of thing. Based on my experience, it's again the same like for the money question. In our collective and what we experience in Budapest with the collectives I'm dealing with, money brings more problems than solution. And I would say the same with energy, that to have such an access to a huge amount of energy is totally perverting the human interaction. That, for example, instead of producing or repairing your bike yourself, we will organize it in a way that we create one big factory in China, which is producing all the bikes for all around the world, which is humanly nonsense. It's energetically maybe productive, from a productive point of view as an engineer, it makes sense. But human beings are not based on rationality, are not based on optimization of productivity. Productivity has to be balanced with a lot of other criteria. And I think this access to fossil energy totally perverted human interaction, interaction and everything. And it's back to Illich. It's what I said, that we think that we are quick, we are strong, I spoke about Ivan Illich calculation about average speed of a car in the United States and everything. I will give you another example. On the big highway around Paris, they decided to, and it was a long fight, to reduce the speed limit from 90 to 70. And everybody was against it because everybody believes in high speed and everything. And because there is always a big traffic and so on, it turned out that the average speed increased. And it's exactly what we have to do. It's to reduce our dependency on strong technology and our beliefs on hard energy and everything to improve the quality of our social and human interaction. And we are really living in there is a fantastic book written by a good friend in France. It's how power is fragile, how power is weak, the weakness of power. And we really believe that if we always implement more power, it will be stronger. But that's exactly the contrary. And this example about the speed limit on the highway around Paris is a good example that things are not linear.
Yeah, I really like your lecture, and it actually reminds me kind of my journey to where I am now, starting to analyze saving the world with the alternative kind of fuels, electricity. But then I discovered one of the biggest problems is the food. Basically what we grow and what we eat. That the animal farming produces half of the gas emissions. So I was trying to focus. And tell people, study all these information to really know. Then I traveled a lot and saw, after coming back from India, I was like, wow, how this world can look like when they increase their footprint. No way, we cannot survive. So there was a lot of this pessimism, how the things, but as I was saying yesterday, now I see there is a lot of initiatives. I see all around me, and I think it's the same thing happening all around the world. People are taking action. But I believe that any change which can happen, it comes from the within. It's beyond our kind of ability to control it. So the changes we are talking about to have this society, this civilization to survive, means complete conscious shifting our consciousness. Which sounds very esoteric, blah, blah, blah. It's not possible, but somehow this is how I believe that the evolution kind of works. So now if there will be enough conscious beings, humans on this planet at this moment, there is a very good possibility that there could be this very radical change of thinking. But if not, this is not the end of the universe, because we are part of the universe and we are nothing. So we just have to believe. I believe in evolution through experiences. Yeah, and I believe that one life is not enough. So when you look at reality in this perspective, it is very bad, and I feel very sorry for what is happening. What we are doing to other creatures, what we are doing to the planet. But it is natural. We as humans have certain consciousness, and we have to learn. So, and the best way we learn is by experiences. So the crisis, this is not the first civilization which can be collapsed. There has been many, many, many others. I mean, in the very short history which we have the records, but at the same time, okay, I think it's more and more like internal feelings. I don't have any rational. That I feel because we are quite kind of connected, not only through the technologies, but there is some conscious connection. So there's a lot of people now kind of thinking about what and how. But I think once you start putting the fear, and once you start putting this urge to save the civilization, to survive, this is not the way to do it. Yeah, to me, this is very, very negative energy. So this is not, it's about showing good examples, solutions like what we see here, what we saw on this whole project, that it can be and inspire other people. Because what I found very difficult, and this was also in our film or in film cultural creatives, there's many people like this around the world, but they are different, and for the society, they are weirdos and they are outside. So if they can see that they are not alone. And basically, if you manage to get this network, and they say, yeah, wow, you know, there are similar people who do same things, and it's good. So then the energy increases. And there is, I see things are happening, but I cannot really see the good future of this civilization, because still we are running out of on the limits of how we can exist. But you know, the change is natural, and it depends how much it will be nice transition, you know, smooth transition, and how much it will hurt. And this is life, you know, and we cannot prevent it, and we cannot fight it, or we cannot do any radical things. I'm really against anything radical, any fighting against for something, you know. I feel there has to be peaceful, like what the Indians do, you know, they march. Or now there was this really nice project, this girl from Germany, they walking all the way to Syria, peaceful march, just walking, nothing. And for me, it's like really nice. And then once you do the radical things, it's negative energy.
First, it's good that you spoke about the collapsing civilization. That it's connected also to that the civilization is like every human being. It's about to get a birth and die. But I hope it will be more clever than the older collapsing civilization. And it's also and what you said, it's really about that, because usually the older civilization collapsed in a way that the people in it, or the leaders in it, were unable to think outside of the box. That you cannot solve a problem using the same tools which created the problem. And what you said is really about that. It's that now we start to see new tools, new ways of thinking outside of the logic of the system. And to conclude, because I think the time is running, I would like to come back to something which was mentioned earlier in the discussion and I didn't speak about. It's which is also, I think, a very interesting metaphor on all these approaches and discussion, is what we call the demographic bomb. And we can have a rational top-down approach to solve the demographic bomb what we have, and say that we eliminate number of children, we have a natality policies and this type of things. But historically, we show that it never worked. It's ineffective, and it creates a lot of barbarity and problem and violence and everything. But if you make a step aside, you can find very fantastic solutions, which are really, I use on purpose for provocation with expression, a win-win-win-win-win-win solution. That if you implement policies allows a woman to be emancipated, it will happen. Yeah, it will happen. So you don't work on natality, but you work on something of the choice of the people to do meaningful things and so on. And the demographic bomb, it's not, I would say, a technical question or top-down question and everything. It's about culture and it's about politics, because quite likely we will reach a peak of population around 2050, about 11 billion people. And we know how to feed these 11 billion people with low-scale agriculture. So the solution is not to forbid the people to have children. The solution is to relocalize and to implement dynamics to emancipate the woman and to have another type of agriculture which is much more meaningful for human beings and human interaction, and both are connected.
You know, just my experience from India, it's like you see the cultures which are better economy, okay, they have less children. But it took me a while to figure out in India why they have so many kids. And this one poor guy, he told me, well, I need to have one son at least to have, you know, security. So in India, it does not apply. And even though, so that means less children, but much better footprint, because their economical standards are much higher. So it won't really help. I don't see a solution in this, because it's not going to be degrowth. It's going to be actually much more spending. and they will have less kids. I mean, look at China, what's happening. They have one kid policy, and of course it's a disaster.
Maybe I'm not emancipated enough. Now I'm a little bit afraid.
And you're emancipated because you decided to have children. It was not something which was implemented by other people or the society.
Okay, we can probably continue with the discussion of the record, and outside we ran out of time. So thank you very much for your great presentation, especially.